Welcome to the Summit for Wellness podcast, where we help you climb to the peak of your health. And now, here is your host, Brian Carroll.
Hello and welcome to episode 26 of the Summit for Wellness podcast. Now, as many of you listeners know, I am a huge fan of using herbal products to help balance out our bodies to the best of our capabilities. And many of you that come to my wellness center know that I actually create some of my own herbal blends to help with the balancing of the body and to help with a lot of chronic illnesses that we see in our society today. A lot of you also know that I am a photographer for some smaller outdoors companies, so I spend a lot of my time outside, out in the mountains and the outdoors, doing all these big extravagant type of trips, and so sometimes I like to use different herbal blends to help with my performance when I am out on these type of trips. So when I came across a company that provided an herbal blend that was originally for outdoor or any kind of athlete, obviously this would capture my attention. And that is what this episode is all about today, is about this company that I have been using, and you've heard me mention them on the podcast before, called HANAH. And they have an herbal blend that I absolutely love, and I think it's a fantastic product. So I reached out to them to bring them onto the show to talk about this herbal product and to talk about what are some of the benefits to our health and to our systems to use this product on a daily basis. So for this episode, we will be talking with the owner of HANAH all about how HANAH came to be, what the benefits and the importance of this herbal blend is, and just a lot of his own background and his experiences with using herbal products to help him in his own health crisis. So it was a lot of fun to sit down with Joel and talk about his product and talk about his experiences. If you want to learn more about HANAH, you can go to summitforwellness.com/HANAH, which is HANAH, to learn more about the product there. And at the very end of the show, we will actually have a nice little giveaway going on for anyone that wants some free product. So listen all the way through and you will be able to hear what it is that you need to do in order to qualify for the giveaway. So let's get right into the show. Today we have with us Joel Einhorn, who is the founder and CEO of HANAH, which is a lifestyle and wellness company that preserves and adapts ancient healing practices for the modern world. Joel is an athlete as well, and he enjoys snowboarding and competing in triathlons and mountain bike races around the world. And he most recently completed the Tour of the Dragon, a 270-kilometer mountain bike race in Bhutan, considered one of the most challenging one-day events in the world. Thank you, Joel, for coming on to talk about your story and how this phenomenal product, HANAH, came to be.
How's it going, Brian? Good to hear you.
Good to have you with us. One of the things I really like to ask people that come onto my show is their story about what brought them into their profession. And a lot of the people I bring on are wellness professionals. But today is the first time I'm bringing on someone that has created a phenomenal product like what you have to offer. So I would love to hear your backstory of what brought you to the point to creating such a wonderful product.
Well, it is a long and arduous story, but I'll give you the cliff notes. I left the States at the age of 19 and went to Vienna and studied finance. And one of the reasons why I wanted to be in Austria was so I could be close to the mountains. I was born in Chicago and pretty flat land there. So finished my degree, and then they sent me to Prague to work for a investment bank. I did the first IPO in the Czech Republic. That was about 20 years ago, and we were very successful. And I realized one very important thing, and that was that I never ever wanted to sit somebody else's office and work for somebody else, especially in the world of finance. So I got out of that, and I wanted to really spend more time in the mountains. I felt really drawn to them, and I wanted to become not a professional athlete, but sort of an athlete on my own terms. And, I also had some business ideas that I wanted to explore. And, cut to 10 years later, I had a pretty nasty bike accident as I was training for my second Ironman in Prague. I basically had went straight over the bars, had a compound dislocation of my shoulder and a traumatic brain injury. And I was really in a absolute horrible state. Went to the doctor. I was in the hospital for a week. I got out of the hospital off the drugs that they were giving me in the hospital to sort of sedate me and keep the pain down. And I realized that I couldn't close my eyes. And, I was in basically looking at what was potentially the end of life as I know it. I know this is, kind of a classic story I think you hear around the world of health and wellness. But I basically, made a little pact with myself that was like, if I am ever able to, function as a human again, I'll do whatever I can to, really savor the day and be, super, super grateful for everything that I had. And I would do whatever I could to, really push the world of health and, around me. And, that led me to, I was basically trying everything that I could imagine to heal myself. Cause like Western medicine, for a traumatic, incident, I think is absolutely, a lifesaver, but it definitely has its boundaries and it has its limits. And, so, I didn't really know too much about, Eastern medicine, but, I was doing yoga and I'd always been into health and wellness my whole life. And somebody had told me about this meditation and I did it. And seriously, about 2 hours after the meditation, I left my house and I went to go get some food and I ran into an Ayurvedic doctor, and really the rest is history. I mean, we connected instantly. He brought me to his office. He gave me a whole list of herbs and concoctions and meditations and mindful things to do. And I was 10 weeks later. I was back in the swimming pool. I was back on the bike, and I not only became really, really close friends with this guy. His name was Dr. George Essay, who has since passed away. But I also became heavily interested in Ayurveda, and it didn't make sense to me with my Western mindset that I had to sort of deprogram. And even as an open-minded person, just the way that they addressed things and the way that they looked at health was just from a whole nother angle. And then I started to learn more about, these ancient traditions that have been around for, 5,000 years or even longer. And it just became very much like an adventure for me. And I was going back and forth to India. It was very, it was very like Indiana Jones-esque, going to these really like backwoods places and finding, these Ayurvedic healers that work with herbs and compounds that they're finding in the middle of certain jungles and things like that. So it was like, people get really interested in wine because of, the grapes and the terroir and things like that. And I just became really interested in herbs as I realized that, not all herbs are created equal. So that's really, how I got into Ayurveda. And, as an athlete, I started to realize as well that as I continued to take these herbal supplements, and I realized that my times were increasing, my stamina, focus, and clarity were up. I was living in the Czech Republic. I was working in German and Czech and also in English. And sometimes, for example, with talking to you like this, where I have to, enunciate and like recall a lot of pretty heavy words and things like that. When you speak a couple of languages, it's very, sometimes you lose those intricacies. And I found that a lot of these words were coming back, which was great. And also, very importantly, when I was out, training and spending long days, whether it's like in the backcountry, snowboarding, or swimming or biking, I had a lot of energy, endurance, and I was recovering, very quickly. So that just really led me into like, all right, if I want to really have one product, I would love to have one product that I could carry with me rather than carrying around, 10 different bags of ominous looking powders. So I started working with this doctor, Dr. Venugopal, who I was introduced to through Dr. George, who lived in Prague. Dr. Venugopal was in Kerala, India, and I basically sat down with him and said, hey, look, this is what I do. This is what I'm, worried about in my studies of Ayurveda. I was worried about some of the stressors in our modern life that we're not really dealing with, like radiation, for example, and carbon dioxide, and then stress. I think stress is, I don't think I know for a fact that, stress is the thing that harms most people, and especially in our modern day where there's just so much interconnectivity and so much stress. I wanted to work with practices and herbs that would reduce this. So we kind of boiled that down into this product that we created, HANAH ONE, and I worked on it for 3 years. And I find it to be not only a good product from a physical point of view, but it's also a good like a Trojan horse into having this type of conversation. So that's pretty much how it came to be.
Yeah, and I've used the product a lot of times, especially when I'm on my own backcountry trips, and it definitely is a phenomenal product. And I don't say that lightly because I'm in the wellness field. I work with a lot of different herbs and a lot of different supplements, and I don't put too much weight into just one product until I found HANAH ONE, and it's the way that my body feels after using it is fantastic. And just in my own adventures, I notice a lot more energy, and I just feel stronger by using it too. So really good job on building this blend. But let's step back just a little bit. Can you talk about what is Ayurveda for those that might not know what it is?
Well, Ayurveda is, I'll give you the simple version of that. It's a way of looking at health and our interaction with the world around us. In Sanskrit, the word Ayurveda translates to the science of life, and the focus of this ancient system is to protect health and prolong life by working with nature to keep our bodies, our minds, and our spirits in balance. I think that's the simplest way to put it.
I like that definition of it too. It keeps it simple, but gives a lot of information behind it too. So when you talk about you were on different herbal supplements, is it similar to the herbal supplements where what we find here in our Western world, where everything is more constituents of specific herbs, or are they actually giving you bagfuls of herbs and you're boiling them into teas or extracts or whatever it may be?
Yeah, so this is where the knowledge that was gained really spurred my interest, because let's just say, for example, we'll use something very, very easy to comprehend for most people, which would be turmeric. Right now, you've got a lot of tests out there that show that turmeric, helps reduce inflammation and can reduce tumor growth and can assist with cancer and things like that. But these studies are done with pure curcuminoid extract, which is the active compound in turmeric. And they're done where they're injecting, let's say, 10,000 milligrams or some absurd huge amount directly in vitro into mice, for example. So then what happens is that the industry can just take turmeric and put it out with a label that says, reduces, blah, blah, blah. And then people take it thinking it's going to be useful for them. And what they don't know, what most people do not realize, is that it's just like wine. I mean, it really depends on where these herbs are grown and how they're harvested, when they're harvested, how the compounds are extracted, and how you're taking the product and how you're absorbing it into your body. And I use turmeric as an example because, like I said, a lot of people know about it. And also, they've just a great study came out where they realized that when you mix turmeric with black pepper and piperine, that it increases the bioavailability of the curcuminoids by 2,000%. So these are the types of things that I was seeing. And when I was working with the doctor and they gave me 5 or 6 different compounds, he would tell me, all right, you take this and you put it into warm water, you stir it and you heat it up to 165 degrees Fahrenheit, and then you let it sit for 15 minutes. And then you would mix that with a spoonful of ghee and a spoonful of ashwagandha and some regular milk, things like that. And the list goes on and on and on. And what I was realizing was that the extraction method that one should use is pretty technical to actually release the active compounds inside of these herbs. So that is one of the things that really got me heavily interested in in Ayurveda and in creating products, because I definitely wanted to live the most productive life I could, and I saw that these products were out there, but there was a lot of misinformation around them. So it really just motivated me to get really to dig deep into these herbs and create a product that I could bring and basically just give to my friends and family around me.
So you said it took you about 3 years to come up with this product, right?
Yes, but I didn't. Just to be clear, so these HANAH ONE, there are many different types of mixtures that are similar to HANAH ONE, and it's called a Rasayana, and it's a medicine in India. And the reason why they create products like this and they'll be completely different mixtures of herbs, but they're usually, actually all the time, they're in a base of honey, ghee, sesame oil, and raw sugarcane. And why they do that is so all of these herbs are bioavailable. And usually it's, around 30 herbs, and they're extracted in different ways over the course of sometimes, a week or 2 weeks. And then they're mixed with the honey, ghee, and sesame oil. Knowing that these different types of compounds existed and getting really, really, deep into some ancient texts with Dr. Venugopal, our idea was to come up with something that people in the West, and I mean people all over the world, could take every day. Because a lot of these compounds are extremely strong and they're extremely pointed toward, to diagnose, specific ailments. So we really wanted to create something that would be good for everybody all the time, and hence HANAH ONE. But yes, we did work on it for about 3 years, and we worked on the different types of mixtures, and then I was beta testing it with friends and family and athletes for about 3 years before we actually came up with the mixture that the herbs that we're using right now. But also it's always a work in progress. Like I said, I think the wine comparison is a good one. It's something that it never ends, really.
Right. So if you look at the other Rasayanas that you find in India, would they be able to support the body the same way in this westernized world like HANAH ONE does? Or does HANAH ONE have more of a specific blend to deal with the radiation and the carbon dioxide and all the stressors that we deal with over here?
Yeah, well, there's all kinds of different mixtures over there, and there are certainly, different Rasayanas that, some are used, like they're selling products called like Chaiwanaprash, which is a similar type of product, and other Rasayanas that are on the market. But when I'm going to be putting something into my body on a daily basis, and again, this is maybe it's one of my own personal bugaboos, but I want to know exactly where it's coming from. And that's what I was seeing with the herbal supplement market, is that, and also spending time in India, I was led around by the Ayurvedic doctor, and he was showing me, he was giving me examples, like, for example, ashwagandha. which is an extremely powerful adaptogen. What happens is when ashwagandha becomes a food additive and a supplement that a multi-billion-dollar market, companies will go into India and they will get organic certified farmland and they'll plant ashwagandha. And, organic farming also, it does use certain pesticides and it does use certain fertilizers. And it's also monoculture farmed in places where it, probably wouldn't grow naturally. It'd be kind of like taking Pinot Noir and planting it in Arizona. I mean, you're going to get a grape, but it's going to have nothing to do with like a Burgundy, for example. So yeah, I mean, there are products out there, and I personally really, as people want to know where their food is from and where their wine is from, I wanted to know where my herbs were from, and so I got really, really deep into, understanding where they grow naturally, and then, build supply chains for a couple of years and figured out ways to get, the most potent herbs possible from the places where they do grow naturally. So yeah, that's pretty much how it happened.
And that's a good point that you made, that they are monocrop, a lot of these really big named herbs that we see all the time, which means they're growing on the same farmland over and over, and they're losing a lot of the properties because they don't have all those other interactions with different species of plants, and they're using the same soil over and over too. So eventually it does reduce the property and medicinal values of these type of herbs.
Absolutely. And that's why, herbs by definition, these, they're very small. You can use logic with a lot of these things too, which is what the Ayurvedic doctors sort of, try to instill in us Westerners with our analytic scientific minds is herbs, these really small little things that grow out of the soil. They're very potent and they're very powerful. And they extract a lot of the minerality and the vitamins from the soil. And what happens, like you said, if you monocrop farm these herbs, the soil is completely depleted after a couple of cycles. And what we were seeing in India is that the real traditional native Ayurvedic doctors were going into the interiors of Kerala and Tamil Nadu to the real native places where you can't even really go. I mean, these people, they live off the land, they live up in the mountains, et cetera, and they would go there because they had the best Shatavari or the best Gotu Kola or the best wild honey or like the best ashwagandha. And this is one example that I saw with my own eyes is that the way that they would fertilize the soil, and it wasn't a very big operation, but I mean they would get hundreds of kilos of ashwagandha, and they still do in this one area that we work with. And they use like coconut husk as fertilizer. They use the local cow manure and a lot of the local things that that are actually right, as you said, right around where the ashwagandha is growing to fertilize it. And I mean, it just makes so much more sense when you see it happening like that, as opposed to a 300-acre flat piece of land with watering systems and things like that.
Exactly. And every single plant, it pulls up different minerals in the soil too. So if you stick with just one plant on one plot of land, it's going to strip all of those specific minerals and nutrients that's in the soil. And then there's going to be just whatever it doesn't use as during its growth cycle left over. So by adding in all those other plants that would typically be found around that same plant, then you're bringing in all those other nutrients too, which essentially makes the properties and the life cycle of that plant a lot stronger.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So you mentioned ashwagandha and that it's an adaptogenic herb. Can you talk about what adaptogens are and what have you used within your own blend to facilitate these adaptogenic properties?
All right. Well, adaptogens are so Dr. Venugopal and I had a really interesting conversation about this, and again, using this sort of logic, simple, visual way of explaining it, and it's pretty amazing. So adaptogens, they get their name, as it's in the title of the name, that they adapt to what is happening in your body. For example, ashwagandha is used to relieve stress and calm down high-strung individuals, and it's also given to people, to give them energy. So it actually will go into the body and it will see what's happening inside of the body. And another interesting thing that it does is it actually will create a new compound inside of the body. After the body uses it for what it's needed for, it will then turn into another compound and flip to another compound inside of your body. There's a bunch of adaptogenic herbs in HANAH ONE. For example, there's ashwagandha, Amalaki, Gotu Kola, turmeric, Shatavari, licorice, long pepper, and a couple of others. And one thing that's really interesting that, for example, ashwagandha and stress. I think that's a pretty, that right now, especially in the current climate, there's a lot of stress. And, there's also, what's really interesting in what they're finding in a lot of these studies is, I do work with a lot of scientists, and we were about to do a controlled A/B test on our ashwagandha and our product. And the scientist said to me, he's like, look, Joel, I'll be completely honest with you. The placebo effect is so strong that even if this product is working so well, that because of the power of thought and of belief, we're not seeing a lot of difference between the placebo and products that actually work, which is, there's a lot of stuff coming out about this right now. But ashwagandha has been used in many studies, and the high quality ashwagandha has shown to reduce cortisol levels by up to 26%, and that's in controlled A/B blind placebo testing, which is pretty huge. And as you and your listeners probably know, cortisol is what is released when we have the fight or flight activated inside of our body. So it's basically stress. Ashwagandha has also been shown to support the regeneration and reconstruction of nerve cells and synapses. And it suggests that ashwagandha could help reverse states of brain and nervous system degeneration. So, that's one that we focus on a lot. And so ashwagandha is in HANAH ONE. And because, HANAH ONE is, like I said, this mixture of 30 herbs and honey, ghee, and sesame oil. And, you can definitely go in and you can start like deconstructing each herb. But what's really important to know is that it's really more about the sum of all of these herbs. And this is something that Dr. Venugopal stresses to me, very, very often, is that the way that it is created, the way that it's extracted, and then the way that it's mixed together in the amounts that it's mixed together creates something that is, much greater than just like stripping apart all of these different herbs. But that being said, we because I've been using so much ashwagandha, we created another product, which was just basically a straight ashwagandha powder that I use and just to sort of like add on top of the HANAH ONE, as it does have such amazing benefits. And I mean, I've been taking it for 5 years now, and I notice the difference if I stop taking it. Obviously, I think I've taken so much of it that my system is sort of reconstructed, regenerated to a certain point. But for example, especially the modern life, like the way that I'm sure that you're living and a lot of your listeners are living, it's we have family, we have friends, we have pets, we have, kids, we have, and then, there's, news and politics and work and this and that. And sometimes it's really overwhelming. And I find that the ashwagandha really helps me to sort of, make lists and do things in a methodic manner. It sort of slows things down and really helps me, optimize my time. So yeah, I can't say enough about ashwagandha.
Yeah, and like you mentioned, there's so much stress in our lives now that having something to be able to support our system like ashwagandha to be able to calm us back down and calm us down even at the cellular level is very important just to get by every single day. And what we see a lot now is people get so stressed and so worn down that they are stimulating themselves in other ways with stuff like coffee and caffeine and whatever else they might use. And in reality, they need to be looking internally into their body and figure out that there's a reason you're tired and you need to start addressing that instead of trying to mask it with other things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, it's really interesting. I mean, being born in the 70s, I never heard the term adrenal fatigue. And now I'm hearing it from like 25-year-old women.
Right.
That is not something that I think is normal. I mean, adrenal fatigue is, that's for people that are, climbing Everest every day for their whole lives, and, or running from wild animals every day. But it's not something for a 25-year-old to be experiencing. And, and I think that this is where we're at an extremely important crossroads here. And, it's time, we need to meditate. We need to, be doing yoga and eating healthy and supplementing with the right things. Otherwise, we're really going to spiral out of control here.
And crash our systems too.
Yeah, absolutely.
So also to go along with stress is the more stress you have, the more it suppresses your immune system. And HANAH ONE helps to boost your immune system. So is it just the adaptogens that's in this blend that help with that? Or do you have other herbs in there that help with the immune system as well?
Well, when, and again, this is all coming, I'm basically referencing Dr. Venugopal when we have these conversations, and Dr. George as well. When the body is healthy, it can't get sick. And so if you look at it in that way, when everything is working as it should be, and I mean, that's everything from digestion, circulation, the function of your GI tract. When all of those things are working properly, and you're eating healthy, and you're managing your stress, and you're meditating, and you're active, and you're in a great surrounding, surrounded by good people, and you're reading good things and putting good ideas into yourself, then it's really hard to get sick. And for example, just taking a teaspoon of sesame oil and ghee and honey every day would be, something that would be very good for you. And so, taking that together with all of these herbs, is something that's going to, I wouldn't say boost your immunity. When I say that with the Ayurvedic doctors, they disagree. They say it's actually bringing your body into a state of optimal health, which will then by default enable your body to fight off things that would make you sick. So if that is a good enough definition for you, I think that's basically what is happening when you're putting products like this into your body.
Yep, and I totally agree with that. You're building up your defenses, which is extremely important.
Yes.
So looking at this product, you've already mentioned ashwagandha, but what are your top 5 favorite herbs in the blend?
I would say, let's see, Shatavari, turmeric, Gotu Kola, and Amalaki. I mean, Amalaki is used very heavily in India and all over that whole area, Bhutan, Tibet, Nepal. So yeah, I would say those are the ones that are very prevalent right now that we're doing a lot of work with.
And what's Amalaki used for?
So Amalaki is used primarily as a healing and nourishing herb for the body and for the soul, and it's prescribed for many imbalances, including immunity and digestion, as well as circulation, heart, and metabolic disorders. It's a small fruit, and it's loaded with vitamin C as well. It's got a pretty sour and sharp taste, and it's that was one of the specific herbs that I was using for my recovery. It's also known as amla in India.
And then Gotu Kola, what is that used for?
Gotu Kola is used for a lot of things. You're actually seeing it pop up in a lot of nootropics right now. And it's also really interesting. It's used by yogis when they meditate. It's known as Brahmi, and Brahmi means a high state of consciousness in the Indian language and Sanskrit, and has been considered one of the most powerful brain tonics in Ayurvedic apothecaries. Yeah, and I'm actually looking at a product right now because obviously I have to know what else is out there, and I'm seeing a lot of Gotu Kola in the natural sort of nootropic world.
Yeah, and I've been seeing that a lot as well since I work with a lot of different products just in my practice. So I really like that herb. And then Shatavari, what is that used for?
Shatavari is also used for many, many different things. It's fertility. It's used a lot for female and male fertility. So be careful if you if you're taking that. Another really great side effect of having increased circulation and no excesses inside of your body, according to Ayurveda. Excesses and buildups are what cause disease. We hear, I have a lot of people come to me, mid 40s, 50s, that one of their they're coming back to me and saying that their libido is way up. So I think Shatavari is known for that, and used for many other things. But I think again, like I said, when you have a healthy circulatory system, I think there's a misconception that I'm 35 years old, so I'm no longer that sexually active, and that's definitely not the case with a lot of people that are very healthy. And that's one thing that they actually ask you when you check into the Ayurvedic centers as a man. They ask you in the morning, are you, let's call it, do you wake up with an erection in the morning? And that's actually a sign of health. So I think Shatavari helps with that.
Yeah, that's really good to know, and that's a great question to ask people, because that's, once you start noticing that libido is dropping, then that's an indicator for a lot of different things happening within the body. So that's good that an herb like that is in there to support those type of systems.
Absolutely.
Now, if people are using your product, because there are so many herbs in there, do they have to be worried about either overdoing any specific herb, or I guess in a way overdosing on an herbal property?
No, that's why we dove really heavily into this and spent 3 years working on it. And again, like I said, that this blend was designed with a synergistic balance of Ayurvedic herbs, fats, and carbs that nourish the entire body and not just a single channel. No, I've actually, when I was bottling this myself, I had these big jugs that it came in, and I didn't want to waste the stuff that was at the bottom of the jug, but I also didn't, I was, I actually used a bakery to bottle the first, hundreds of jars when I was in Prague. And I think one day I ate about 2 jars full of it. And, I had a very heightened, interesting sort of nootropic feeling going on. But yeah, that was a personal experience. It was pretty amazing. But no, according to, the Ayurvedic doctors, obviously, there's, I wouldn't go overboard and drink the stuff, but, because there's things like ghee and sesame oil and honey in there. So in moderation, no, you don't have to worry about going overboard with it, in a nutshell.
And having ghee in there too, because that's a fat. Eventually you will be too full to continue eating more than 2 jars. So that's impressive. Yeah. You ate 2 jars.
Yeah. I just wanted to try it out and see what happens. I need to know my product very well. So it was pretty interesting.
That's definitely a great way to learn. So speaking of that, how do you use a product?
So obviously this product wasn't intentionally created for, out in the field, athletic. What happened was actually Dr. Venugopal made a batch. This was about 3 years ago, and sent it to me while I was on a cycling sort of like retreat in Italy. And he said, look, I made one batch and it came out too thin, and the consistency was very similar to like a sport gel, right?
Like a goo packet?
Like a goo packet. And, one thing that I did realize when I was doing like triathlon, there's really no way around the fact that, you're out in the middle of wherever and you're running and you've only got so much pocket, so many pockets. You can only carry so much. So you end up carrying these gels because it's quick and easy. And, the next day you realize that you feel sick and you don't feel right. And then you start deconstructing that and you see what happens when you inject yourself. You're basically spiking your blood sugar levels and your insulin. That just can't be great for you, especially with, something like, something like these gels and no disrespect to them. I mean, those things saved my life many a times, but I just really was, and then I had heard somebody tell me, oh, do you know that if you just take honey, it's basically you're getting the exact same. They did like, again, the placebo thing on some rowers at like, I think it was Oxford, and they got basically the same results. So I started taking it on the bike, started testing it in hot weather, cold weather. And, I started just, taking it straight with water, and I started noticing that it was giving me everything that I needed. And so then, cut to the modern, our present time. The way that I'll take it, I take it with, I love coffee, and I drink, 1 cup of drip coffee, or I used to do just 1 espresso every morning with my breakfast. And, so what I do now, like drip coffee gives me, it gives me jitters. I hear that from a lot of people. So what I do is I make a light drip coffee, and I put ghee, ashwagandha, HANAH ONE, and MCT oil in it, sort of like a bulletproof, but a little bit optimized. And then I just put it in a blender, and that's kind of like after my initial water in the morning. I'll take it like that. And then if I'm snowboarding or cycling or doing something heavily active, I'll take the Go pack. So we have like a small pack that we put the product into, and I'll just have that on the go. And for example, at the bike race in Bhutan, or when I'm in the mountains and it's freezing cold and it's powder day and you're 6 hours deep into the day, you take one of those, and it really sort of hits that spot, that that hole that's sort of, being created inside of you. So yeah, that's how I'm using it.
And you can use it many other ways too, right? You can use it in recipes and not just in drinks.
Yeah. I mean, people take it straight. I also take it straight. sometimes like yesterday right before we did a late yoga class, and we had a long, busy day, and instead of eating before the class, we just took it straight with water. People are mixing it with teas. They're putting it into food. Like people are making like those date balls, and I think Kit Delorier just made. She's a like a North Face athlete, lives in Jackson Hole, and just like a superhuman. And she's making like these like oat bars with it, and people are getting pretty creative with it. It's really interesting because it's such a unique taste, and it's kind of like the Marmite. I don't know if you know what Marmite is, that Australian like taste type of thing where people either love it or hate it. So we're getting some sometimes people are just like, I want to put this on toast, I want to have it all day, and other people are really trying to kind of like just mask the flavor a little bit. But if you go on our website, there's tons of recipes, consumer generated, which is awesome. And you can see there.
And that website is hanahlife.com for anybody interested. Joel, I appreciate you coming onto the show. You brought a ton of very valuable information about your product, and like I said before, I absolutely love it. I use it every day, and I'm someone that does not use any kind of stimulant or anything to get me going in the morning. I don't drink coffee, and this is the one thing that I really like to use on a consistent basis. So thank you so much for coming on and talking about what it is that is inside of this product and how it came to be. I think a lot of people will find that fascinating. I know I did. So where can people find you online?
Well, the website, HANAH Life, HANAH life.com. They can find our company there, and my Instagram. I kind of have a little bit of a side story going on with some of the R&D that we're doing, like for example in Bhutan. So if you wanted to check out what's going on there, it's just at Joel Einhorn, which is JoelEinhorn.
Perfect. Thanks, Joel, so much. Thanks for coming on.
Brian, thank you very much, man.
All right. Have a great day.
All right.
There you have it for my conversation with Joel. Now, after we finished recording, Joel and I talked for quite a while, and I am really impressed with all the work that they're doing over in India and how sustainable HANAH is, and that's one of the things I really like about them is just how sustainable they are. So Joel and I decided to come up with a little giveaway. And if you go to the Summit for Wellness podcast in iTunes and leave a review, and then send me a message on Messenger, going to summitforwellness.com/messenger to say done, then you will automatically be entered into a drawing for a combo pack of a jar of HANAH ONE and Ashwagandha. So we have a couple of those to give away. So if you go to iTunes and leave us a review and then message us and say done, then you are automatically entered. Also, if you are on Instagram, we would love to see the activities you really enjoyed doing. So if you post a photo or a video of what you love to do, then please tag HANAH Living and also use the hashtag HANAH Living to show us what it is you love to do. So get out there and get exploring.